You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Wednesday, July 26th, and it is the official first day of training camp, open to the media, open to the fans. And today, to talk all about it, I'm joined by Benjamin Camperman to talk about it. How's it going, Ben?
It's going good. Excited to get back with football because, man, it seems like yesterday that we were watching the Super Bowl go down, and now it's already August, and it's just crazy how that time flies by. We were just in July, June and July, the dead parts, and now we're about to hit August, which is great, but for me, it obviously means that school is starting again. So man, but yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me on. It's been a long time coming because we definitely both tried to schedule different shows with each other. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And I'm glad the off season went by quickly for you. For me, it felt so slow. I'm glad that we finally have real football to talk about. It's always a great time of the year. But look, we got a lot of updates today, and we're gonna go through all of them. Just some minor jersey number updates. Samuel Womack is now wearing number 0. He used to wear number 26, I believe, right? He was 26. So now 0. That's a good look on him. This, cool number. I believe this is the first time a 49ers player has ever worn the number 0 because that's, new NFL. I don't know if you call it rule. It's not really a rule, but new thing, introducing new numbers. So number 0 for Womack. I like it. Newcomer Terrence Mitchell wearing number 49. Let's get into the good stuff now, okay? Non-participants, Brock Purdy, we knew wasn't going to participate today. Nick Bosa, we know he's holding out. Darrell Luter, we know is on the PUP list. Mitch Wishnowsky, also on the PUP list. So no surprises there for the people who didn't participate. There were a couple of guys, too, who were there, probably warmed up with the team, but they did not participate in any of the team drills. Christian McCaffrey, Kittle, Trent Williams, all that.
Yeah.
Look, I know you guys are here to hear about the quarterbacks, right? So let's start talking about the quarterbacks. Trey Lance, we know that Lance and Darnold were going to split the first team reps today because of course, Brock Purdy is out. So seems like Lance got the first crack at the snaps today. And I don't know if you feel like that means anything, but I think it's good that Lance, on days where Brock Purdy is not practicing, we get an extra look and some extra snaps for Lance.
Well, and from what I heard, the previous years, it was like he was very inconsistent coming out of the gate. He'd have one play here where he'd sail it. Well, he'd complete a great deep touchdown pass, and then he'd have another play where he would sail it over the middle. But from what I heard today, he was 5 for 6. I don't think he had an interception. It was Sam Darnold who was like 2 for 4 interception, whatever. But
yeah, exactly.
The thing that I kind of take away from this is, his consistency has definitely seems to be getting better. And now it's like he came out swinging, he came out ready to play, and that's really because he knows that this is his really the year that he has to show out. He has to take every because last year he was given a lot more opportunities. This year and he could maybe this year he has to capitalize on those opportunities because he might not have another one coming for him. So the consistency is there and he's showing that he can improve. I know that Sam Darnold, he's probably trying to improve some of what he struggles with, but for the last 5 years, it's been the same old thing over and over with Sam Darnold again. And it's like Trey Lance at least is kind of, he went to a different coach and he's starting to improve in year 3. And year 3 is typically where quarterbacks, you see a jump with that quarterback. So that's kind of what I took away from it.
Yeah, and Darnold, like, that's kind of been the knock on him, right? Like, we know who he is more or less. Like, yes, he's
Mhm.
in a different system in San Francisco, and yes, this is a QB friendly system, and he has Kyle Shanahan, and look at all these weapons, but more or less, he's going to be the same guy. And Trey Lance, on the other hand, there's still that untapped, I mean, you could say potential with Lance,
Right.
we just haven't seen. And so that's why, personally, I feel like Lance, with the opportunity to be splitting these first team reps, I would like to see a little extra snaps for Trey Lance.
Mhm.
I don't mind that they're splitting them, but maybe give Trey Lance 70% and Darnold 30%, right? That's my take, that's my opinion, but it's great to see that he has put in the work this off season. And yeah, I mean, he was 5 of 6 and 11 on 11s, as we mentioned. Darnold 2 of 4. He took a sack. There was also a blatant drop by Jordan Mason as well. So that
Mhm.
affected those numbers too. But Grant Cohn, after practice, said that Darnold looked a little indecisive, and Trey showing off that quicker release. As mentioned, working with Jeff Christensen. So, glad to know that that's looking good so far. We'll see once things start to really get rolling, once Nick Bosa's out there, once pads are on. Is that going to continue? But so far, so good. And Grant called him the better QB of the day. Brandon Allen apparently was awful
Yeah.
today. I think he was 0-3. So he was taking the third team reps as well. And another thing about Lance, Kittle spoke with the media after practice, and he said that he sees that Trey's confidence has grown. And I think that's huge, because a lot of playing quarterback is not just the preparation. It isn't just the mechanics. Yeah, it's great that all those things are looking better, but a lot of it is also the mental aspect of it. And you have to have confidence, especially being in this situation that he's in, having to scratch and claw for a position on this team. It's great that, his confidence is getting much better.
Well, and you were talking about the pads coming on, and last year I remember it was very hard for any quarterback to complete any passes against this defense.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's kind of doing that is going to be very impressive. And the thing with Nick Bosa, it's like with him, he probably, even if he does come back, won't participate every single day. So I don't know
Yeah.
if we're gonna really see full Nick Bosa in this training camp. So we don't know. But yeah, and Brock Purdy, touching on him a little bit, man. The 49ers, they need to take it as slow as they can with him, because I still can't believe that he's recovered this quickly from injury.
Right.
And yeah, let's hope he stays healthy. But
Yeah, and I almost feel like in the past, like, I wonder if maybe they have rushed some guys back in the
mhm,
past, and that's why there had been a trend where we'd see guys rehabbing and then they'd have a setback. Is it because they were pushed too hard? Is it because they tried to come back a little too quick? I almost feel like with the report that Brock Purdy has been fully cleared, but they're still adhering to like his rehab and going 2 days on, 1 day off. I feel like that tells me that they want to take it slow. Like, there's no reason for Brock Purdy to be like going full go every single snap in
mhm.
practice right now. So I think it's good that they're kind of easing him in, and I kind of feel like that's by design, because yeah, you do want to make sure that he's ready for week 1. You don't want to have any setbacks. And I kind of feel like, so they're kind of doing the same thing with McCaffrey too, and Kyle
Mhm.
Shanahan alluded to that today, that it's just part of the ramp up, to getting into the season.
Mhm.
You want to make sure that you're not going full go right now in training camp for some of these guys like McCaffrey, like Kittle, these guys who already have their spots solidified on the team. You don't need to see anything extra from them in training camp. They're going to be full go and be their old selves in week 1. But you also want to make sure that they stay healthy, right? So not putting those guys in unnecessary situations where they're doing more than they have to. I think that's really good. So hopefully that's the case with Brock. And again, today was Brock's off day. So the next time that the 49ers practice, he should be out there. And from what we've heard, yeah, that should be tomorrow, right? So Brock Purdy will be out there tomorrow, and he should be operating as the QB1 and getting the first team reps. So we'll talk more about the quarterbacks in a bit, but we did briefly talk about Nick Bosa, and I do want to talk about the starting defensive line without Bosa. What does that look like, right? Just out of curiosity, it was Clelin Ferrell, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, and Drake Jackson. Not really any surprises, but I do want to talk about how I feel that Nick Bosa holding out, for one, I'm not worried about him at all. But I think it's a great opportunity for both Ferrell and Jackson to get those extra reps and be out there, because I think they really need them. Ferrell, for one, to get acclimated, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people this year. But also Drake Jackson, he's looking to make that leap in his second season. So I think, getting those extra reps for him too is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and going against that starting offensive line, and they need that competition, because the thing is like, this offensive line is like a mid-tier offensive line in the NFL. And so if you're playing backups, it's like you get thrown into a game and you're playing one of the top offensive lines, and you haven't played an offensive line that whole year because you've been playing the second team. You're not playing that level of competition because you've been playing the second team. So playing that starting offensive line is going to be really, really key as well. And going like with Nick Bosa, people are saying like, well, I actually, not people, but I was talking to a Cowboys fan that I know very well, and he's like, and we were having a debate, which one's better, Micah Parsons or Nick Bosa. And I was saying, like, everyone paints the 49ers defensive line to be so great, but the truth is they didn't have another player, I don't think so, over 5 sacks along that defensive line last year.
It's true.
And so, and I mean, yeah, we need that guy back, because even though he's every ranking that I've seen, he's not the number one defensive line, edge rusher in the league, but to me, he is. And so, yeah, we need him back. But it's funny how everyone's like, the defense is so good. That's true. But the defensive line last year was all Nick Bosa, and what he did was impressive. So,
yeah, pretty much. And I'd throw Eric Armstead in there too, even though he's not a big stat sheet guy. But and I think that's the thing, right? Like, there's guys on this defensive line, but they don't fill the stat sheet, which you do want to see, if you can have a defensive line that's all disruptive, but also productive as far as, getting sacks. I mean, that's great. I think Javon Hargrave's going to help a lot with that as well. But yeah, I mean, I hope, and I think that we might see Nick Bosa, once pads come on, which I think is like the 5th practice. So hopefully they can get something done by then or shortly thereafter. But in the meantime, these reps are going to be really good for Drake Jackson and for Clelin Ferrell and some of the depth guys as well. But let's talk about the linebackers really quick, because, Azeez Al-Shaair no longer on this team. And so for those of you who are wondering, well, who's going to be the third linebacker, it looks like it's going to be Oren Burks, who has been on this team. And, for me, that's not a surprise at all. And I don't think it should surprise anyone either. I mean, he has a veteran experience. He has that experience on special teams as well. So he has that extra value. I know there's a lot of, youngsters on this team. And, when we talk about the linebackers, there's always diamonds in the rough. I mean, you look at Marcelino McCrory-Ball. I know we're excited about D. Winters and Jalen Graham and how they could fit into this and how they could develop. But, I think they're going to have to earn that spot, right? As of right now, it's Oren Burks. But that doesn't mean that someone can't prove their value too and, make that decision a little tougher for the team.
Well, and the year before last, Dre Greenlaw got injured. So, and I'm not saying that's going to happen this year, but there's a good chance that they will. Now, linebacker for the most part has been one of the most healthy position groups. Like, Fred Warner, unlike the rest of the team, he actually stays healthy. So this is one of those position groups where if you're not a starter right away, it's going to be very hard to see time. I mean, I guess Dre Greenlaw could get injured, but I don't think he missed a game last year. So it's going to be exciting for sure to see these guys compete, especially training camp. The one thing that I loved the most about last year, not training camp, but preseason, was seeing young guys like McCrary Ball just ball out,
Yeah,
ball
it
out,
was awesome.
because you're not going to see him again for a while, unless injuries happen to them. And they're going to be developmental pieces where 3-4 years down the road, if Dre Greenlaw continues to go on the trajectory that he's been on, McCrary Ball, D Winters, who I think is going to go between in the next few years, D Winters, I think, is going to go defensive end. He's going to be like a defensive end / linebacker, because that's what he did in college. And I think the speed that he has is they could use him in that role as well. So in the next few years, it's like these are developmental guys that the 49ers will bring in. So it's going to be exciting for sure.
Yeah, and the 49ers are so great at developing these young guys. So that's why I'm always eager to see like who's going to be the next guy to step up. Marcelino McCrary Ball, definitely one of those guys that I'm keeping an eye on, and I want to see do well because he was a very exciting player in last year's training camp. But let's go into the team drills, or sorry, just the team period, 7-on-7, 11-on-11s, and just talking about some individual plays that we heard about from training camp today. Before we do, I do just want to add this context that I think is important for people to understand, because a lot of the times we see these tweets, we see these reports about some of the plays that take place, and we get really excited. And there's nothing wrong with getting excited, but I think also we have to understand some of the context behind it. So keep in mind, players still don't have pads on, so that does, at times help the offense. It also helps the defense at times. So, just take that for what it is. Also, there's no tackling in training camp. And so a lot of the time, what would be a tackle on the field, the running back's going to go for a little extra yardage. The wide receiver that made the catch, he's going to get some yak that maybe he wouldn't have, in a real game situation. So just keep those things in mind when we hear like, oh my God, he broke off for a huge play. Almost like I'd say maybe 75+% of the time, it's just because they weren't tackled. Like they're not going to get tackled. The offensive player is going to keep running. Duh. Like they want to score every time.
Yeah.
So I just want to add that context. But it's still exciting again to see some of these reports of some of these plays. And let's get back to some of the quarterbacks really quick.
Before we do, real quick though, I saw that the 49ers just signed the USFL linebacker Kayava Tezino. So
it is interesting because I saw the report that they were working out 3 different linebackers today. And to my knowledge, I don't think there's any injuries to any of the linebackers, but now I'm like, maybe there's something, or, maybe they don't want Fred Warner having so much time out there. Right. Again, one of those players who doesn't really need it. So good to know. I love the breaking news while we're live.
Yeah.
But going back to the quarterbacks, this note from Brad Graham, he tweeted, a lot of short throws in 7-on-7 for Sam Darnold and Trey Lance. There were misses by both quarterbacks, uninspiring period by the quarterbacks, but not to worry. I think as the practice went on, it kind of, quarterbacks got a little more active, and that's to be expected. It's day one. It's day one of camp. And so a lot of the times, the defense also is going to have a great day while the offense is still kind of figuring out, what they're doing.
And you had Jalen Moore. Sorry to interrupt, but you had Jalen Moore starting at left tackle. So
that's true. So Trent Williams, he's there, but he didn't participate in the team drills. So Jalen Moore got the first crack at first team reps at left tackle, and we know how that goes. So I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see, so I don't know if he did bad or not. But
the concern Trent Williams usually is good at not missing a game, but if he does this year, I fear for our quarterbacks' lives, because Jalen Moore, that's No, I don't want to see
So
that.
far, from what we know so far about Jalen Moore, yeah, there's some concern there. But they signed Matt Pryor too, and
Yeah,
I
good
think
point.
he could potentially be that guy. But yeah, I mean, hopefully there aren't any injuries to Trent Williams. That would be pretty detrimental to this team. Um, but it seems like there were a lot of checkdowns, a lot of like outlet throws for the quarterbacks in the first session. Nothing spectacular. Um, but like I said, it seemed like as practice progressed that there were, a few more throwing attempts as practice went on. And, Kyle said that today's practice was easy. It was a light day. I think they finished kind of early even. So that is to be expected with it being the first day of practice.
Yeah, I saw that with a few people that Ambry Thomas, that's a bubble player, didn't do too well again, which I had high hopes for him, especially after that 2021 year where he actually kind of seemed like he was improving. And I'm with the secondary really is the biggest, position group to me because, Dimador Lenore was great last year, but he kind of reminds me of Ambry Thomas the year before, was really good.
Oh
And then
no.
I well,
Don't do
it
him
doesn't
like that.
remind me of him, but my point is like Ambry Thomas also had he was improving the year before and then he kind of just lost his confidence
I mean,
completely. So, I don't know. That's going to be an interesting one because we brought in a lot of competition to kind of
yeah.
compete with these guys for sure. So,
Yeah, and I think that's great. And also like Steve Wilkes, being in the mix now.
yeah.
How is he gonna help out the secondary, these corners, right? And help their development? I think that's gonna go such a long way for this defense. And based on some of the tweets I saw today, it seems like, he was already a very vocal leader. And of course, like that's what you would expect. But not just being the defensive coordinator, but having a focus on what the DBs are doing, right? Like it seemed like he was very involved in that aspect. And, maybe for good reason, because last year that was maybe the one area you can point to that wasn't, quite where as good as it should be. So hopefully they make some strides this season. But also I saw that he dialed up a couple blitzes today. I
Hmm.
think he dialed up one for Hufanga, and I believe Hufanga got a would-be sack on that one.
Hmm.
And then excuse me, also Isaiah Oliver. So we're already seeing some of the creativity with the blitzes, and that was as expected. I think from based on what we've seen Steve Wilkes do in the past with his defenses.
Isaiah Oliver is one of those guys where I kind of underrated pickup, but I go back and watch him. He was actually a really important part of that Falcons defense for a good portion of the last few years. So that should be an interesting one. I don't know when we're getting to running backs. I'm kind of excited to talk about TDP because he had
Let's
a lot
talk
of
about it.
he had a lot of
Yeah, let's
potential coming
go.
out. For him, it's like when you saw him at LSU, he's a fierce runner who has a ton of just like he runs with his like he knows how much he weighs and he's just going to run over you. He knows that he's a fierce runner. And so to see him kind of come into his potential, I heard that he had a good day today. He was a big surprise in Niners training camp. To see his potential, I mean, obviously last year didn't go as well as we would have hoped, but the thing is with TD, with especially running backs in the NFL, it's hard to get acclimated to the speed of the game. And it's good to see that he's doing that because this guy at his potential has a good body, a good frame to be like a workhorse, split the carries back. And it's like, we don't want to rely on Elijah Mitchell too much to kind of carry the load beside Christian McCaffrey because he gets injured a lot. So imagine adding like a power back like TDP in there to pair with Trey Lance. Obviously, we drafted him when we drafted Trey Lance. I believe that was that the year after? It was the year after.
I think it was the year after. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. But anyways, he's kind of that guy who can go up the middle and give you 5-6 yards because of that power. So it's good to see his potential's really coming. He's coming into his own. So
Yeah, and like I was kind of seeing it like, okay, it's probably too early to say like TDP is a bubble player. I don't think
Hmm.
he was. But I do feel like this is a huge season or off season for him because I mean, we've seen the 49ers move on from running backs before, if they're not showing enough. And so I kind of was really hoping that TDP, another year under his belt, can take that next step. And I'm going to read just some of the tweets that we got about TDP today. Rohan, who was out there, he tweeted the only good play of the first scrimmage, a nice find from Trey Lance to Ty Davis Price on a wheel route with pressure coming. Good catch in stride by TDP. Another tweet from Rohan. He said, TDP on something today. Burst showing as well as elusiveness without pads, but a good early sign for the 49ers. And then Brad Graham, said Ty Davis Price has been the best running back in 49ers practice today. Multiple big plays during team drills and is running with a purpose. I mean, that's exactly what you want to hear about, TDP, right? Just based on the season he had last year. So it sounds like he's turning a corner. And this is the thing with camp, but also the first day. Like, we only have these reports to go off of, and sometimes some players fizzle out. I'm really hoping that's not the case with TDP, and I
Hmm.
hope that he can really, keep it going, especially also when the pads come on, because right now, like I said, times like this when they're not in pads, that does benefit, the running backs quite a bit. So hopefully he can keep it going. I'd love to see it.
Well, and the thing with him is that, like, yes, you're going to be the fourth running back on the depth chart, or we assume, but it's so important to get that trust from Kyle Shanahan because, yeah, you might make the team one year, but he's not going to run you if he doesn't feel that you're not going to like fumble the ball or something like
Yeah.
that. Like Jordan Mason last year we were like, why isn't he getting more carries? Why isn't he getting more carries? Because he has to solidify that spot and he has to prove himself. And so the fact that TDP, yes, it was very likely that he was going to make the team, but kind of like what you said, it's like you have to get that trust from Kyle Shanahan. So when you're the second running back on the depth chart because two guys are missing time, he's going to trust you and he's not, because we've seen in the past. I remember a few years ago when we had that horrible plethora of injuries. We had Jerick McKinnon and one other person or whatever. And well, we've maybe not then, but there's been instances that I've seen in the past from Kyle Shanahan. If he doesn't have another running back that he likes, he's just going to load it all on one running back. He's going to give that running back 20 carries. I feel he's done that with Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey at times. And so it's important to kind of gain that trust. So when injuries do strike, you get a piece of that pie. So
Yeah, exactly. And Jordan Mason, who was, the beneficiary of having such a strong training camp last season and eventually got extra time when Elijah Mitchell went down. I mean, he was getting early reps, splitting first team reps with Elijah Mitchell today since Christian McCaffrey was not participating in the team drills. And yeah, there was a question, or there's a statement here. JP dropped the rock today. I heard he got it back, but he dropped it. Yeah, I mean, the report was that Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, linebacker, forced the fumble. And, I didn't see it, so I don't know if it was more on Mason or just such a great play from Flannigan-Fowles. Maybe he, peanut punched it. Regardless, you don't want to see fumbles. But, unless it becomes a trend, I'm gonna chalk it up to DFF, playing some good ball. And these linebackers have always been great at just punching the ball out. And come on, let's get it started in
yeah,
training camp, right? Like I want to see that. So, and I think at the same time, it's going to force our running backs, our offensive players to take care of the football, because if you don't, this linebacker group is going to expose you, right?
right.
So I think it's hopefully one of those iron sharpens iron kind of scenarios. But I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, it happened today. So hopefully it doesn't happen again for Jordan Mason or anyone else on this team. But by all accounts, it sounded like the linebackers were playing some impressive ball. Fred Warner also showing that he can cover any wide receiver. He was covering Debo, down a deep corner route and was able to get a pass breakup. So, Fred, all these guys, they're ready to get after it. I'm excited to see what they do in this camp.
And people say like Roquan Smith might have like more stats as far as like, I think Roquan Smith is the like overall ball hawk. He is more of like a downhill safety mentality, but nobody does it better coverage wise than Fred Warner in the league. I don't know if we have the kicker much in the kind of topics today, but I did see that Jake Moody didn't get much many kicks. Zane Gonzalez had the kind of reps over him. So I'm wondering if they're kind of going with the veteran option, the safe option. I wouldn't be surprised because it's hard to trust rookie kickers. That's for sure. That's one of those positions where you have to be spot on every time. So
they drafted him in the 3rd round, though.
I know.
If you draft a kicker in the 3rd round and you're not using him, that is just insane. It was already insane that they drafted him in the 3rd. Like, I'm hoping, okay, it sounds weird, but I'm hoping that it's just maybe he was a little sore today or maybe he's dealing with something and that was the only hopefully it's nothing major or nothing indicative of, the 49ers souring on him or this early. I don't think that's the case, but
what was the kicker that was drafted really high for the Buccaneers? That was really bad.
I forgot his name. It was like a Rio or something like that.
Yeah. Drafted in the 2nd round or something. Yeah. Please don't become like that. Because anyways. Especially in a year where the 49ers didn't have many picks. It's like if we had a 1st, 2nd, and 2/3, I'd be like, okay, it's not our top pick, but this was our third pick, basically. So
yeah, I mean, drafting a kicker in the 3rd round, probably like as a kicker,
Robert Aguayo. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, that's probably as much pressure as being like a quarterback drafted in the 1st round, right? Because like it just, I don't know. Hopefully, it seems like one of the reasons that they drafted him to begin with was because he's tough as nails, mentally strong as well. So hopefully the pressure is not something that's going to get to him. But look, I'm not worried about it. We'll see. We'll see what he does tomorrow. But let's talk about the receivers really quick because we spoke about Debo, obviously Fred Warner running stride for stride with him. That's because Fred Warner is, a freak, but Debo is in the best shape that he's been since 2019. That's what Debo said today. And I believe it. I mean, he looks slimmer. He looks in shape, right? And I've been saying that if we can get 2021 form of Debo, and I know that he's motivated this year. Like if we can get that type of Debo, this offense is going to be really hard to stop because when Debo has that like mindset that he gets the ball and he's going to take it for a big gain for a touchdown, it's really hard to stop him. I'm really rooting for Debo this season.
Well, and it's in his best interest because, yes, he's gotten paid and that's the goal. But here's the thing. There's not many more teams that you want to play with than the 49ers. This system fits exactly what Debo Samuel wants to do. So if he goes to another team, if it's anyone other than maybe the Chiefs and maybe I could think of a few, but there's not a ton of teams that play this same system. He's definitely not going to go to a team where he gets as much work on the regular. And so it's going to be very key that, because he has something to work towards. He doesn't want to get traded. That's one. And two, he kind of wants to get the target share back that he had during 2021. My thing with him is this guy is going to, my projection is he's going to have over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, both running and receiving this year.
Like combined or both? You saying combined,
Combined,
right?
so like
Yeah,
running
yeah.
and
I
receiving.
I I
I'm
could see
saying
that.
I'm saying like 800 receiving, he could go over 800. I don't know, but it's gonna be over 1,000 from definitely. Um,
I think so too. I mean, I think again, like the motivation that he has, I think is gonna translate to a crazy season from Debo, and that's great for this offense. But you know who was also gonna go crazy is that dog. That dog BA. Brandon Ayuk, man. Like
mhm,
I keep saying it. I just feel like with every season, like he gets better, but also it
mhm.
still feels like he hasn't reached his ceiling yet. And I'm really hoping that this year is when he reaches that ceiling because he has the talent. It's just, I think there's other factors there, but I'm I'm loving the energy that he brings. We talked about the fact that he put the defense on notice. Like days before training camp even started, he's like, "If you're in a white jersey, f you." Like that's the energy he's
Mhm,
bringing. And today, and John Chapman tweeted this:
mhm.
Ayuk brings down a contested jump ball and stares down the entire defense. Like I love that. I love that
He
competitive spirit, and I think it just makes everyone else, including himself, better.
he this so I wanna ask you a question. Do you think that if he was on a team like the Vikings or Bengals or even Chiefs, obviously, do you think he would have Justin Jefferson type numbers? Is he that type of player? I would
So let's say
'cause
Justin
s
Jefferson is not in Minnesota and instead it's Brandon Ayuk. Yes,
yeah,
I do think that
you
he
do
would
think so?
put up similar numbers, maybe, and I can't say definitively that he would have like the same numbers, but I think he would be in that range just because, that offense is willing to throw the football a little bit more than the 49ers. I
Yeah.
also feel like the chemistry that, Kirk and Jefferson have, they're locked in together. Um and so I'm kind of just hoping that the 49ers, Brock, whoever the starting quarterback is, right? I'm hoping that chemistry is there because I think that'll go a long way for Ayuk and him being able to put up those numbers. He had in the 1,000-yard season just last
Mhm.
year. And again, it still just feels like he's barely scratching the surface of what he can do, right? And so I think there are other like reasons why we haven't seen it yet. The scheme, they move the ball around. There's a bunch of playmakers on this team you got to feed. But also like the chemistry with the quarterback. And so it kind of sucks that, Brock Purdy recovering from his injury, rehabbing this entire offseason, didn't really get a chance to grow that relationship, that chemistry with his receivers this offseason because that would have been great, right? Like that's usually like when for a quarterback who's going into a second year, like that's what you look forward to the most,
Mhm.
having an entire offseason to get on the same page with your receivers. And so Brock not having that, I hope it doesn't hurt like, Brennan Ayuk at all. But I'm just excited because again, he's bringing that energy and I think he will have a bigger year than he did last year.
Well, and the big thing I think, I saw a few comments here in the chat. Let's see, where was it? CMC and locker room trickle effect. In some sense, CMC looks hungry. Play up to your peers. To me, I think, we've always said, why are the 49ers settling? Yeah, we're one of the best NFL teams there. Like, why don't we have more fire? That's been a big question among certain fans in the fan base. But I think after this quarterback year, we definitely, I don't know, you could prove me wrong, but we definitely have a little bit more of a fire among the leaders of this team to kind of go prove them wrong because I think a lot of people feel like they were truly done wrong with what happened to Brock. And so now they're going to go prove everyone wrong. And hopefully that is the mentality going into this training camp. And so far after day one, the talk coming out of players' mouths, it kind of seems like it is. So it's definitely going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, and when George Kittle spoke today, he did kind of allude to why that is, and how some of these players do feel like their window is, closing.
Closing.
This
That's what I've been
core,
saying.
it, they know that with guys getting more deals, it's becoming and it's going to continue to be increasingly hard to keep all these guys um, on the roster. So if you want to get a ring with this group of guys and you feel like these group of guys give you the best chance to get that ring, you need to all be on the same page. And it sounds like they are, right? Like, and Tim K tweeted this. I'm going to read what he said. He said, Kittle said the players understand how much talent they've got and how expensive it's getting. Says some players know their contracts might not fit relatively soon, so the emphasis is on winning it now while they're all together. And like you said, I think we're kind of noticing that in some of the urgency you're kind of seeing from some of these players. Like we talked about Debo. I mean, yes, they have their personal motivators, but I think as a team, like they all know that they need to figure this out. They need to get this going, and now is the time to do it. So I think it's great. I think it's great that they know this, and hopefully they can apply it to the season, and hopefully not just the entire season, but to the start of the season, because we've seen too many times this team start off slow, right? And I feel like they waste away a couple games of the season that they could have easily won, that they could have easily put themselves in a 1 seed position. And because they're, basically tricking away the first few weeks of the season, then they're kind of, making do with wild card or, second seed, third seed, whatever, what have you. But you can't start off slow. If you want to get first seed, like you got to be on like all season. You can't expect other teams in your division to, drop some games, and that's how you gain, your positioning on them.
And last year was it was a not lucky, but just a year that the 49ers were fortunate that the Seahawks and just no team in that division was really that good at all. But you look at kind of the later teams in the year that we play. We have the Eagles, we have the Ravens, who've really improved dramatically. I've said this on my show many times. It's like if the 49ers start off slow, they're not going to be able to kind of gain, like they're not going to be able to do what they did the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, they can't assume that because they've done it before that they can continue to do that. Like I think that's their mistake.
Right.
So
I see Rich Keltz there. I need to have you on again. So thanks for
I need to get
in,
Rich on it. Yeah, I need to get him on soon, and hopefully during training camp. I'll hit you up, Rich. But I think from what we heard today from training camp, like I got a good feeling on, again, it's just day one, but overall I feel pretty good about some of the reports that we got today. And, I'm just excited for day 2. Who's going to stack their days starting with day 1, right? Who's going to, fall off a little bit. Day 1 is day 1, but this is a 2-week almost body of work that they got to put together, and they got to stack their days. And that's how we can form our opinions on, the positioning on this team. But I mean, Ben, I'm excited for day 2.
Me too.
Is there anything you're going to be keeping an eye on for day 2 after what we heard day 1?
Colton McKivitz. I heard that the run game not as great there, and if the run game without pads isn't great, then what's it going to be like with pads? That's one thing, and it's just like he needs to be at least the Mike McGlinchey level, which I think he can be. I mean, he was the last few seasons, but I even want him. I mean, the nice thing with him is he's young and he could improve for sure. But yeah, that's one thing. And then the linebackers are kind of interesting. I don't know who the linebacker coach is, but now that we lost DeMeco Ryans, this is not really for camp, but in the following years, now that we lost DeMeco Ryans, how is the recruiting process going to be with our linebackers? Like, how good is this core going to become
That's
after?
a good question.
Warner leaves and stuff. So
yeah, that's a fair question. The coach is Johnny Holland, who I think he's been with the team for a couple years now, or a few years now. So I think that, they still know what they're looking for, and so hopefully we see some of those diamond in the roughs, start to shine.
Yeah.
And so I'll continue looking at the linebackers, but I feel like I'm gonna continue to keep an eye on TDP and see how he continues to progress. And also I want to see more reports from Jake Jackson and how he's doing and how he's acclimating to his second season. But I'm excited, man. It's great.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun season. It's definitely a fun time to cover the Niners. Please don't ever going back to the 2-14 season. I'm just glad we are out of that point.
Me too. And it seems like everyone else is too, because there's a lot of fans who are showing up for training camp, and we love to see that. But with that, guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Ben, thank you for joining me. Make sure you guys like this video if you have not yet. Make sure you guys subscribe if you have not yet. Like I said, I'm going to be doing videos after every day of practice. So tomorrow I'm going to be back with another one. I'm going to have John Chapman and Wayne Breezy on the channel to talk about day 2. So make sure you guys tune in for that. But for now, have a good rest of your Wednesday, people. Peace.